What is up, man?
Nothing much, man. Nothing much. Just another day.
Yeah, another day in paradise.
Yes, sir.
All right, I like it. I like it. Um, dude, I'm super excited for this. It's gonna be a completely different like switch up from a lot of the people that I've had on are in kind of industries, and I guess you're semi in an industry that I have been in, but you're in a very specific niche, which I think is gonna be cool for people to hear a lot of the same concepts that I've talked to with other people applied in your specific niche, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I want you to describe. I always like this exercise. I stole it from another podcaster. If you were in an Uber, right, and somebody asked you, the Uber driver is talking, even though you might have asked him not to talk, and he asked you, like, what do you do? How would you describe what you do, just in simple terms, in an Uber?
Believe it or not, my wife, she's in the corporate world, and she has me practice this because
Okay.
she feels, through her training, this is something you should be really good at
Yeah.
because you can be long-winded,
Hmm.
and that's her jab at me.
Yeah.
Right. So what I tell people is I am a coach, but I say it with conviction. I'm a
Yeah.
coach. I help people build their confidence so that they can reach their passions.
Okay. So I find that interesting because of your niche. You don't mention equestrian at all.
No, because what I did is I got down to the root level of what I do.
Yeah.
If I walk in a room and it's, we're gonna say, affluent people
Hmm.
play a lot of golf. I'm in a lot of golf, country clubs, and people say with distinction, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I
Hmm.
run insurance agency. They say it with a lot of, we're going to say, passion and
Yeah.
proudness. They're proud of what they've achieved. And when I walk in the room, if I just say, oh, I'm a personal trainer, I'm a
Hmm.
strength and conditioning coach, sometimes it can come across where I am belittling myself. But if I
Hmm.
say I'm a coach, it means something. It should mean something. I have a passion for that. Like, I'm a coach. I help people feel
Yeah.
really confident in their pursuit of their passion. Oh, and I say it just like that. And so I get a lot of people that go, whoa, whoa. And so they get to know me like I'm a fiery dude. So
Yeah.
so that automatically lets them know, wow. And then I get the following questions, right? And that's what I want, is
Mhm.
to create conversation. So they'll say, well, what do you coach? And then that's when I enter the niche. But that's my elevator pitch. All of my clients, I build their confidence so that they can be able to be great at their passion, which is riding their horses.
Yeah. That's so awesome. And so I honestly figured that you were going to loop the niche in right then and there. And I think it's very cool that you have practiced that to that level. And I am terrible. I need to practice that because I'm terrible with my wife. She gets hurt. It's not necessarily a jab, but she throws me under the bus every time that
Mhm.
people, if we're at like a networking event or something, which we've been to several, and if we're meeting new people, she'll people ask what we do, and she'll say exactly what she does, and then she'll be like, and he does a lot of things. And then she like that's how she'll kind of throw me out there, and I got to explain, I feel super uncomfortable saying like I'm an entrepreneur, or
Mhm.
I'm a business coach, or I'm a personal trainer. Like I feel super uncomfortable. I don't know if it's like trying to encapsulate myself into one word, um, or if it's just like I feel like you were saying you felt like you were belittling yourself by saying just like I'm a personal trainer or a strength and conditioning coach. I feel like it feels like braggadocious saying the entrepreneur word,
Mhm.
because I don't know, it just makes me so uncomfortable. She does it every time she's introducing me. She's like, he does a lot of stuff, and then I have to put to because then they're like, oh, what all do you do? And I'm like, I got this,
Yeah,
I'm kind of
yeah.
doing this. And it's like, it just feels weird to me introducing that way.
I totally get that, and I was there. But you know what? When you're out there playing some rounds, and you get, you get matched up with some other two people in your
Yeah.
round, and they're randoms, and they'll
Mhm.
ask, so what do you do? And when I say that, no, I'm a coach, man. I help a lot of people build up their confidence so they can do their passion. So it's not like Tony Robbins esque, but
Yeah.
I say it so much that they go, "Oh man, you're a coach. Well, that's cool. So what do you coach or what do you
Yeah.
do?" And then that's when I can get into the weeds a
Detail.
little bit. But at first, I'm proud to say that I'm a coach.
Yeah.
When I started that, my wife would say, she'd overhear and she's like, you're not actually a businessman. You're not an entrepreneur. Like, I wouldn't
Mhm.
say that's what you do. So I wouldn't come off like that. She'd be my biggest critic because I
Mhm.
think she just wanted everyone to see me in the same
Yeah.
light that she does because she hears about the tears. She hears about people's successes. She's there when I'm meeting them in person and they're giving me big hugs and let me introduce you to my horse or look at my family. She's like, that's not a business guy. That's
Yeah.
You're a coach and you should be proud of that.
Yeah.
She
I
hyped
think
me
that's
up
powerful.
enough to build me up like that.
That's powerful. That's powerful. Well, let's kind of turn back the clock. I want to hear
Yeah.
about how did you get into coaching in like take me back to the very, very start. Like what got you into the industry?
So, and I don't want this to sound like a sob story, but growing up, I come from a separated marriage. So my parents
Okay.
got divorced, and I had a 10-year-old younger brother. So when I was in high school, and I got hurt playing football, probably shouldn't have been playing football, but that's what all the kids did. And
Yeah.
I was a super skinny kid. I was always under a weight management because my family, they're all boxers, pro
Mhm.
boxers. Some of my relatives were in the original Rocky. They have
Wow.
pictures. Yeah, so
That's sick.
they rented their gym to do all of the Rocky 1 scenes.
Holy cow. That's
Fun
awesome.
fact, it wasn't in Philadelphia. It was in
Okay.
East LA. Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was filmed in East LA, not Philadelphia. So I going into high school, I stopped boxing, but I was still light. Anyways, couldn't play anymore, got hurt, and my brother wanted to do sports. So
Mhm.
my first coaching job was at 15, 16, coaching my 5, 6 year old brother's flag football team.
Nice.
Head coach
Yeah.
out of school, picked him up from his school, and we walked over to the park. And I volunteered. The Parks and Recs department said, "Well, nobody else is volunteering," and that right there sparked like this fire to coach and to have kids look up to you and follow and do everything you do, or have parents say, "Coach Tony, my son, all he does is talk about Coach Tony, and he does everything you tell him. Like, we can't tell him anything, but you can tell him go throw out your trash or pick up your room because that's what a good kid does. And this is a privilege to play football. And this
Mhm.
kid picks up his room before he comes to practice so he can tell you, Coach, I picked up my room." And so then I was like, well, I didn't think I had that much influence. I
Yeah.
like that. I like that I can do that. So I always knew then I was going to coach. I mean, I coached all of his teams. My brother's going into high school, and that's when I kind of stopped. I wanted for him to find his own way with another coach. But I mean, I coached every sport, developed systems on how I was going to coach, won a lot of games, but it wasn't the winning. It was more about like the kids that you see around town and they like wave to you. And I like
Yeah.
that feeling because it's the impact that I liked. It was I helped people. I helped these kids. I mean, a couple of them went to the NFL that I remember coaching
Wow.
their Pop Warner team, and it was like they see you around and they'd be like, "Man, coach, I still remember those drills you had us do, or the sleepovers that you had at your house. Those were
Mhm.
awesome." And for a little kid, man, I thought you were the man. I mean, I'm a
Mhm.
grown man now, but you were the man when I was growing up. And so to have influence like that, positive influence, is why I got into coaching. When I went into college, and I knew what I wanted to do, I just didn't know I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach until one of my counselors, she said, "Well, you like exercise. You don't know if you want to coach sports like a team coach. Have you tried strength and conditioning?" Got in I was always in the weight room. I always wanted to build up my physique and feel good about it. So I did, and I liked it. And then I decided to be a strength and conditioning coach. And in college, you needed to have a master's degree. So I got the master's degree. I got a graduate assistantship and didn't know sets, reps. I didn't know anything, but I knew this. I could coach up teams. So when I
Yeah.
was a graduate assistant, and they throw you to the wolves thinking, aha, you're gonna fail, and that's the lesson you're gonna learn, is how to be in front of a big large audience, how to command respect in a weight room, how even if you don't know it, you fake it till you make it. Like, these things you learn being a GA. Well, they threw
Yeah.
me in there, and I thought I was doing a better job than the actual coaches
Yeah.
because I had so much experience coaching 5-year-olds. And to be honest, 5-year-olds gave me a lot of experience on how to talk to football players in college.
Yeah.
Simple, direct, and you don't get any options. It's my way. And so in
Mhm.
football, a lot of the guys gravitated towards me. And then they gave me other teams, and I didn't know anything. I just followed. I wasn't programming because I didn't know. I didn't know the X's and O's about what's going on, but I knew how to control groups. I knew how to raise my voice so that everybody understood what I was saying. I knew how to give clear cues, and that led me to and most importantly, I knew how to build relationships,
Yeah.
especially with the athletes that came from a single parent home.
Mhm.
So I knew how to communicate with them. And that elevated me to a lot of other jobs. So I worked at colleges like UCLA. I worked at University of Colorado pre-prime time.
Mhm.
I worked at University of Kentucky, and that was my last spot. I can't forget, I was a head strength and conditioning coach for a mid-major. So think Gonzaga.
Okay.
That's a mid-major because they don't have football.
Got
So
it. Okay.
it's strictly a basketball school. And I was there for about 7 years as a head strength and conditioning coach, which was amazing. So when you're a head strength and conditioning coach in college, you're in this brotherhood. You know,
Mhm.
you're in this fraternity where number one, we all think we're better than being called personal trainers. So
Yep.
that's the
Yep.
thing. Like you become like a little snobby about it. Like don't ever call me a personal trainer. Even to
Mhm.
this day, it's still hard for me to accept that because we paid our dues to be, strength and conditioning professionals. You get these certs, you get a master's in this stuff, exercise science, whatever, and you really own it. But I learned a lot of lessons because there was a lot of great men in that industry. If you think about personal training, if you're really really good at it, you're not available to a lot of trainers because you're running this big business.
Yep.
Most personal trainers, they last about 3 to 5 years. I think that's the expiration date. Like if you can't fill the book by this time, you can't support yourself. So you become now an insurance agent or whatever it is, right? Your real estate. In strength and conditioning, you got guys that have been in the game for 30 years,
Mhm.
always speaking, always available, always there for a phone call before Zoom, always there for a conference call,
Yeah.
and so you learn a lot of wisdom about leadership, about understanding the X's and O's, but you see what the grind and life, what shaped these guys that are in the NFL, that have been in colleges for 30 years, and you're just like in their shadows and trying to get on their shoulders and learn everything that you can from them about not just the industry but about people
Mhm.
because they've worked with so many young people, some young men and women, that you get a piece of knowledge, the real knowledge. How do I take someone that's 18 years old and doesn't know anything and misses mom and dad and doesn't know how to be an adult, but when they leave, they're a productive member of society.
Yeah.
And they may have a 0.2% to play in the pros.
Mhm.
So I gained a lot of information about how to influence people by being a strength and conditioning coach, how to fire someone up. Yes, you're in weight room and you think meathead, music, yelling,
Mhm.
cheerleading, and that's what gets put on Instagram. But in the trenches, there's a lot of great coaches out there that know how to get into people's hearts and know how to, in spite of them, make great things happen for them.
Wow. So you really got your start on the people side of things, which I would not knowing you now and knowing all the stuff that you and I talk about how technical your training practices are and your actual like methods that you're using hands on with clients. I would not have thought that. I would have thought you started out on the super technical side and then you built the relationship side after. So I guess with you getting your start in strength and conditioning and going from coaching teams and coaching like little league and things like that going into coaching athletes, what would you say? I mean, you mentioned the communication being simple and concise. What did you notice was like the X factor for building a strong, like tight knit team? Because I'm curious about that, honestly, for my own needs of doing that within my companies and
Yeah.
building that in there. So what was the thing or the glue that you kind of realized that, hey, I can introduce this and this brings people together.
Right. So what we did, where I was in charge when I was a head strength coach, I used the sports psychologist that we had in the university, and we started diving into a lot of personality traits. So
Okay.
understanding how people view themselves on the team and what their role was, and understand how they handle the pressures of being in a team. So as a coach, I knew if you were an extrovert, then how you handled coaching alongside of your history. So we would be able to have like this game plan on what pieces we had, and then from those pieces, how to communicate to everybody, especially when it came to building a team. That way they knew exactly what their piece was, what their responsibility was for that team. Because
And
you
did
had
you,
some people, go ahead.
sorry to cut you off. One question before you continue. Did you use assessments to figure out the personality traits, or did you just
Yes.
watch? Okay, assess.
Assessments.
Okay,
We
got
used
it.
assessment to figure out, were they, number one, what was their personality one, that had certain traits that were of leadership, was it ones that were more like, were they good followers? When
Mhm.
they handle stress, were they extroverts? So extroverts, when they handle stress, they show some type of sign. Introverts handle other types of signs. So when you're coaching someone, if they start to shrug down and you're yelling at them, that's not going to work well. So they'll never be part of the team per se, because they don't understand why that doesn't work for them. And then other team members, when you're in a team, you always think like this high energy,
Yeah,
and that's not it. So we taught our people what frequencies to use, and I'm like turning my knobs here.
yeah, yeah.
That
I
way they
see.
can understand how to talk to people. So I think if I were to sum up everything I just said, was all about communication. That's how you become a
Mhm.
good team, because it's just like a relationship, a marriage. If your communication sucks, no matter how technical, how many roses, how many golf trips your wife lets you go on, if there's not that communication, you never really know how to be a good team.
Mhm.
Good, bad, or indifferent, communication, it was the key. So for us, it was, how do we build this system where people can come in and communicate? We had wellness exams, questionnaires that we use for readiness, like to gauge how do they feel, how school treating them. But we also started using like, how are you? What do you think of the workouts? We wanted to build autonomy, because
Yeah,
autonomy, not that the inmates are running the asylum, but we wanted to make sure that they had a little piece of, or skin in the game. Like,
yeah,
we were going to build you something that you all are going to benefit from, and you're going to have some control, because now it's theirs. So possession. So it was communication, and then pride or ownership in their training programs. We we relayed that to the coach, to the head coach, on what we were doing, and he used that in his practices, or their practices. There was a lot of coaches that we work with, and so we found success in those two methods.
yeah. That makes a ton of sense, and it really the portion that makes the most sense, I think, to me, with how you explained it was it. You talked about how they have to have some skin in the game, and if they contribute to the creation of the thing, right, or maybe some of
Mhm,
the decisions made for the thing, then they will benefit from it more and enjoy benefiting from it more because they played a role in it.
mhm,
Because one of the biggest things that we talk about all the time with in the sales and marketing world is post if you're if you're, let's say, with like a lead magnet, we're going to create a lead magnet, right? If you're between two different topics for a lead magnet, don't make the decision yourself. Put it out there and and ask the people that are going to be consuming the lead magnet, ask them, put it on your story or something. Hey, would you guys be more likely to want this or this? Right? Let them vote on it, because now they're playing a role in the creation of the thing. Like Alex Ramosi, I don't know if you follow much of his stuff,
mhm.
but his most recent book, $100 Million Leads,
Yeah.
he tested the he did like brackets of titles for the book, and was having people vote on Instagram, a months or maybe even a year before he actually created it. As he was writing the book, he was testing out titles on his Instagram story. He's like, "Hey, would you be like more likely to buy a book titled this or
Hmm.
this?" With the tagline, "Would you be? Does this make you want to read more, or does this?" With the cover art, which one do you like more, this or this? And he went through and he did all of that. So then when people see the book get launched, they're like, "These are all the things that I voted for. I like played a role in creating Alex Hormozi's newest book, and so then now they're way more likely to participate when it launches because they invested themselves in the creation. So I think that's brilliant in terms of creating that with teams. So what are the ways that you guys let people come in and play a role in, like, how did they create, I guess, with your structure?
So we had a feedback form,
Okay.
and we gave them the categories that they could have access input on. So it
Okay.
would be music on if they were a Monday, Wednesday team, Monday, Wednesday, Friday team, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, music choice amongst the team.
Yeah.
And then if we gave them music, we gave them warm up exercises, we gave them conditioning. So they were going to condition, and we knew what methodology was going to produce the results we wanted, but it
Mhm.
wasn't the only thing. So the result we knew we were going to get, the modalities they could pick, whether they were
Yeah.
going to sprint, bike, or they were going to do other types of modalities. They had an option,
Mhm.
but they were still going to get their butts whooped, and
Yeah.
it was still going to be some intense adaptations.
They're
But,
gonna pick their poison, but at
but they
least it's the
picked their
thing that they
poison,
pick. Yeah.
and for some of them, some teams got smart and were like, "Hey," the captain came in and filled it out and said, "Hey, coach, I filled it out for the team." Because they
Mhm.
had a consensus, like, I don't care if we have, I hate the bike. So I'm going to make sure I'm going to influence all you girls and we're not going to do this bike. I'd rather run. And so then
Yeah.
it would be running. I'm like, all right, we're running. So it was really fun too, because now they're 30, a lot of
Mhm.
these athletes, and I still follow them on Facebook or Instagram, and a lot of times I'll group them. I'll say, hey guys, I was having a thought, like, wow, what did we do when you all were in college? And a lot of them are moms, married, and some of them will say, I tell my husband, like, we had the most interactive workout and we were all in because it was like our workout, and I still remember them because I picked it. Like, I had a choice, and so I still remember what we did, exercise by exercise, and I'm 34 now.
It's so powerful.
And so that's when my assistant and I were always laughing, like, because it was a Jedi mind trick.
Mhm.
But man, we had some close teams. In spite of sometimes us not being perfect, we have
Yeah.
emotions, we have bad days. You can say you choose to have a good day, even in spite of bad. Like, sometimes you just get there and you're like, I'm not feeling it. And the teams, they were almost on autopilot.
Mhm.
They didn't need your energy, your juice. They had created it on their own. And sometimes they'd be like, Coach, we got it. Don't worry. We're excited. We got, everybody's feeling good. We're feeling stronger. So we got it. And so they even they taught themselves how to create their own internal energy. So you really just stood there and were like crossing your arms and just making sure nobody got hurt some days.
That's such a great spot to be in too. I want
Oh,
you to tell that story that you were telling me on, I think it was this past week. You were telling me about after a tough game with that group of girls you were coaching.
I told you a lot of things, which
I
the,
think you were telling me basically it was either a tough game or a tough practice or something, and you came in and you didn't really have to say much. You kind of just said like, "Hey, girls, I'm disappointed," and then they kind of did all the speaking and did the
yeah,
bounce back from there.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I want you to kind of tell that story in your words because I
Yeah,
think it's
so I
powerful.
remember one of my friends. We were out and it was a big group of friends, and I was just in conversation, thinking to myself, like, this person was talking about how her dad would have this thing about, like, oh, I'm so disappointed in you. And
Hmm.
she said, as a woman, it wasn't that I was a daddy's girl per se, because I was like, I had two other sisters,
Hmm.
but it was like letting down your dad was the worst thing. He took away my privileges when I was growing up and whatever, and that didn't hurt. But
Yeah.
him walking around, not upset at me, but like just looked at me like I just had so much more belief that you would be responsible. That
Mhm.
crushed her. Cried. She said she cried for days. So I, of course, took that story, and as a coach, I was like, I get it, and I'm sorry, but also, and then
Mhm.
I coached a lot of female teams too, because when you're a strength and conditioning coach, yeah, you go there for the flagship sport, basketball, football. Those are the money making sports.
Mhm.
But you know what? When you're in a small mid major, you might be coaching 9 teams as one coach.
Yep.
So you're creating 9 training programs, and you think, oh, nine, I have 50 clients, and I create programs. Not the same.
Mm-mm.
Not the same. 9 teams, because in those 9 teams, you're talking about over 300 athletes.
Yeah, yeah, 20 to 40 a
Yeah.
sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever the math is right there, right?
Mhm.
So it's hard.
Yeah.
And what I started to understand about coaching female sports is coming in there and being like a BA and just trying to coach them like a men's basketball team was not going to help our women's lacrosse team or our women's field hockey, I'm sorry, team.
Mhm.
It wasn't going to help our softball team or our women's volleyball team. So then you get into a lot of the nuances as a coach on how you can make impact. How is your communication style going to produce the results that is beneficial for you and for them? So one day it was somebody's birthday, and they had come in, and everybody was, that they had not performed well at their practice, and then so the coach said, "Hey, let them have it for their training session." And they had come in, and they had gone out. I guess that's why they were messed up, because they weren't able to practice well because they were all hungover.
Mhm.
So in the weight room, they did the same thing. It was carrying on over. So I stopped in the middle of practice. I said, "I think, girls, what's going on is you let a lot of people down. I'm personally disappointed. I'm not mad at you all. You are the ones that have this big game against these big schools, and we're a mid major, and we have this opportunity to do something great and win, and you all just thrash it, and it's just disappointing. I think everybody, for me, I don't know your coach. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to tell you guys to push this sled until everybody throws up. We just did so much work. I'm just disappointed." And I looked down. I did the whole thing, and it wasn't like I was. I know it's going to sound like, "Oh, you're manipulative,"
No.
but what I did is I expressed in their language how mad everybody in the program was about what they did. I just
Mhm.
did it in a way, in a frequency that would ultimately be received.
It would
Because you can
land.
yell at
Yeah.
someone, and when you're yelling at someone or you're being hard on someone, and they just like have this glazed look, you're tuned out. You are
Mhm.
on the wrong frequency. So you could be like this, and I'm not being manipulative. I'm just putting it out there my way. Good luck. I did that. I did hell and brimstone early
Yeah.
on as a coach, but I learned gain influence. Do I want to be right, or do I want to influence? Pick two. You're in an argument, you're on Instagram, and somebody said something that is not necessarily the way you do things. Do you want to be right, or do you want to influence?
Mhm.
If you think about that when you're coaching someone and they're not following your program, do you want to say things just so that you can be right, or are you going to say things so that you can be influential? Because you have a choice, and most likely we don't stop and check our emotions, and we become, I want to be right. It's an ego thing.
Yeah.
And it's not like ego. I'm not saying that you're going to choose to have this egotistical personality. There's moments, though, we're human. We can get to that moment where we have a little ego, and it's like when you step back and after a lot of failures, that you can go, there has to be a better way. So there was the
Yeah.
communication. I know that this team really liked training with me, and so I played on the disappointing thing, and it worked. The captains came up, and they were very teary eyed. I guess they went to the locker room, and they came back. Just two of them came back and said, we didn't know that it was going to be this bad. We didn't know, like, we were going to let you down. Coach was super mad at us, and we didn't really care. But I didn't know, like, you also were disappointed in us. I'm not mad. I mean, you guys are like my little sisters. I'm not mad
Mhm.
at you all. I was your age. I'd be, hypocritical. But it's just like we had this big plan, and that's what messed me up. And I just go, I don't know. I'm just, I'll get over it. And they said, no, we're sorry. Can we make this workout up? Can you give us an hour and we'll make it up?
That's
All
awesome.
communication, all winning, influencing, all
Yeah.
building teams. All they
Well,
still remember that. They still remember that incident that happened back in early 2000s.
yeah, and the powerful thing there really is the whole metaphor between you heard this well, I'll say tactic again. We don't want I don't want it to come across as like as if it is a just a tactic that you
Mhm.
employed to take advantage or anything like that. But
Yeah.
the you heard about this type of phrasing in this frequency, I guess, as you
Mhm.
put it, from a girl talking about her dad, right? And the fact that you used that frequency and it had the same effect and it landed the same way as this girl with her dad and most women with their dad. I could ask my wife and she would say the exact same thing, like being her dad being disappointed. Mom can yell, mom can
Yeah.
say whatever, dad can yell, dad can do whatever, but dad being disappointed is a completely different feeling. And the fact that you had such connection with them that they had that same effect whenever you were disappointed, it shows the type of connections that you were able to build with these teams. What do you think? Because I think a lot of people have probably coached a little sibling or even a a child's team at some point, right? Maybe even when they were young, like you did. What do you think made you not just like coach them and then be like, yeah, that was just something I did. That was like a kind of a time suck for a little bit, like kind of brush it off. Like, why did you approach it in such an analytical way and be like, and really immerse yourself and come out the other side thinking, I have this gift now that I think I can really run with. Like, why did you approach it in that way?
I thought about that a few weeks ago, because someone else that I was playing golf with asked me like, how'd you get into coaching? And I
Hmm.
think what happened was, besides loving my little brother,
Yeah.
and wanting to be there for him, what it was, well, it's a little selfish at the start, because I felt this void of not being able to be this athlete that I thought I could be. So then I felt like I'm not good at that. What am I going to be good at? And
Hmm.
then it was always being, I'm the oldest sibling, and it was tapping into this nurturing side of me. And I think what for males, having a nurturing character might be viewed as weakness. It's not when people think macho, they don't say macho, nurturing,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? They think toughness, go through the pain. My superpower is nurturing and being sympathetic.
Hmm.
And younger, I think I would have been younger in my career. I would have been very hesitant to say that,
Okay.
but that's why that lane opened up for me. Is I could come into teams and be very sympathetic for the kid that was never going to play on any other sport, another other team. There was the kid that was the star, but had an ego or didn't know how to be a teammate. And so there was a lot of opportunities for me to show these kids how to be a good teammate. And it just was something that I didn't know how to do all these things, but I was very fascinated, and I put a lot of effort, more effort than the X's and O's.
Hmm.
And when you get someone, just pick the X's and O's, whatever your industry is. But if you focused a lot on your people skills and understanding what that person needs, not just like sitting down and going, what's your goals? What do you want to do? How can I help you reach your goals? But really dig down deep and see that this, I'm going to keep going with my team example, that this kid is very shy, lacks the confidence, maybe is a little overweight. You got the kid that's a little heavier on every team when you're growing up. It's just people
Hmm.
develop at different times. And then,
Yeah. Yeah.
10 years down the line, that kid is jacked and 6'5", and you're like, what
Shredded.
happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, but you could see that. And so I just dove into that kid and made sure that he knew the importance of himself and his team. And I gave him opportunities to get better. Not that he knew, and it was realistic. You're not probably going to be the best. This kid practices every day. But when
Hmm.
things were changing, is when you created an environment where everybody is getting better. What would happen in games is when I threw that kid in that wasn't really good, and nobody would give him game playing time, but I did. I gave him significant time. The kids that were good would make sure that they pass him the ball. This was in basketball, obviously here at that, so he could score. And when he scored, it was a team score, because
Everyone goes
everybody was
crazy.
like, "Jimmy, you did it!" And Jimmy would
Yeah.
come out like, "I
Like a
did it.
rock
I
star.
made
Yeah.
a shot." But he took 20 shots.
Yeah.
But the thing that people passed, and even the good players were like, that was more fun than me scoring my points.
Hmm.
That's when I knew, like, man, if I do this all the time, I'm gonna have a lot of great teams. Not because we're beating people, but at the end at banquets, that's when you're fighting back tears, because
Yeah.
a lot of these parents are like, "Ooh," and you're like, oh
Hmm.
man. I'm looking up, right? Like I can't even see these women's faces, because
Yeah.
all I did was make sure that everybody played. You can't get better if you don't play. You have a responsibility, even if you are not good. The plays. So
Hmm.
everybody got tested, and it was an environment where people were able to suck at first. Like That's what they say. Oh, I suck at dribbling. Now
Mhm.
maybe right now, but at the end of the season, you'll be better. And that's what I want. And I think those traits and that patience, probably another virtue that you really work on here, the patience to let people grow and to feel like they're getting better because you're inspiring them to get better. You're inspiring them to want to improve. And what happens is when you inspire people to get better, when you give them benchmarks so that they have a growth mindset, because it's so easy to get into this fixed mindset, and you give them a lot of autonomy in their company, in their team, to be able to voice their opinion, what you get a situation where now a team is in a position where when you tell them, team, you just disappointed me, it's impactful. If you
Yeah.
never have a connection with your team, you can go in there and say, this just lets me down, I just really disappointed. The team might go, and so
Yeah.
it didn't
Cool.
work.
Yeah.
It didn't work because you didn't set down the foundation of caring for them first, understanding how they learn, understanding a little bit of their history, understanding a little bit of their likes, understanding like what, okay, basketball, you're not really good. Your mom or dad made you play. What do you like?
Yeah.
Oh, I like playing, Pokemon, or I like, oh, cool. What cards do you have? Oh,
Mhm.
coach, I'll bring my book one day. Bring it before practice. That way we could see it. Buy-in.
Mhm.
And so that's what I did at every level that I coached, whether it was elementary, then junior high, then high school, then college. I always thought, if I know someone's parents, who raised you, grandma raised you, what was her name, what she make you do, I could get the kid that never listened to any coach to listen to me. Why? Because I actually cared. I'd get people to
Yeah.
come in my office and close it and say, can I talk to you about something? And I'd be like, "Uh-oh, what's this kid doing?" And it was bad all the time, but I
Yeah.
was the one, not the head coach, me.
Mhm.
And so that came easily because, again, I had this nurturing lane that I really, really kind of dove into, nurturing and being very patient. I might not be
Mhm.
patient with myself, Baker, but I'm patient with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's hearing you talk about a lot of the things that you kind of finished with, right? Like, getting the guy in that or the girl in that didn't play a lot and just really just calling them up to the plate, like giving them a chance to go and just telling people, hey, it is you need to you have these expectations that you can step up to, right? Like sometimes people just need as a coach someone to expect something of them.
Hmm.
And I think that's such a big portion of what we have to do as coaches. It brings up a story to me that we heard from. Are you familiar with Ed Milet?
No. Oh, yes, 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 yes.
You,
I have his podcast. Yes, I just
you
don't listen to
probably
it a lot. Yeah.
yeah, you
Yes.
probably heard.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
a huge speaker. Um, but he was talking at this event that we took the team to in Orlando a few months back, and he was talking about his son. And his son his son was interested in golf, so he would always take his son to go golfing. And he tells the story way better than me, but he would always take his son golfing, and he would always tell his son, I'm gonna love you no matter what. Okay, I don't if you shoot good, if you shoot well, if you shoot poorly, like I'm gonna love you. Dad's gonna love you no matter what. And he'd have his son like repeat it to him. Dad loves me no matter what. And so he was like, my son was a terrible golfer, like to the point where it was almost excruciating playing with him. But I would always tell him, I'd always encourage him and be uplifting and be like all the things that I thought that he really needed from me. And he talks about there was one time where him and his son would do father son tournaments sometimes, and he would just have his son in tournaments, and he would be like his caddy. And there was one tournament in particular where they were grouped off, right? And he was with a pro golfer and his son, and then some other like athlete and his son. And these kids were like doing all the lessons, all the same stuff that Ed's son was doing, but these kids were like legit, like golfers. Um, and one of the dads said something at one point of like, "Hey, we're gonna go. We're gonna keep playing on." And he said something to Ed's son. He's like, I don't know what's Ed's son's name. Jimmy, you go. Why don't you go ahead and go grab a snack for a bit? We're gonna go ahead and play ahead. And he said Ed said he just lost it. And he was like, you don't you dare talk to my son that way. My son's gonna, and he's like starts going off and stuff. And he pulls his kid aside and he's like, Jimmy, we're gonna win. And he's like, "Dad, what? Like, what do you mean?" He's like, "No, we're gonna win. You're gonna crush these kids." He was like, "I don't give," and he starts like kind of cussing a little bit, and
Yeah.
then he's like, "I'd never cussed in front of my son before," and so he was kind of like wide eyed, but he was telling him like, "We're gonna win. You can do this. Like, you know all the same stuff they do. You've done more practice than all of them. We're gonna win." And he was like, the next time that his son got up, there was a little bit more like swagger. Like he walked up to go tee off, and he was like, I've never seen him like kind of twirl a club around and kind of like have a little bit of a bounce in his step. And he went up and he just hit an absolute dart, he said. And he was like, Ed was acting like, yeah, we've just been holding back. But he was like, I was like, where did this come from? And he said his son played lights out the entire rest of that tournament and came back and beat these two kids. And he was like, he was talking about how uncoordinated he was and how he
Yeah.
was doing little dance moves, celebrating every shot and stuff. But his son went on to, like, from then on was just phenomenal at golf. And actually, and you never know if he's actually embellishing like the exact timing of it, but his son just got invited to his first pro tour as a golfer. Yeah, like legit golfer now. But he was always known for just being this terrible, goofy little, and it was all because Ed always just told him, "I don't care, buddy. You do whatever you want to do. You know, like I'm always gonna love you." And then the second that he called him to like, "Hey, let's do this thing. Let's do it," and like kind of pushed him a little bit, the kid just flipped on, and all of a sudden he's a savant. Like, he's an absolute savant at golf. But it just took Ed actually calling him to step up and giving him a chance to be like, "Hey, this is the time. Like, let's do this. We're ready." So I don't know. I always kind of have people reflect on stories and stuff. Does that sound like kind of what you're alluding to, is like just giving people a chance to perform?
A chance and to really instill this growth mindset. When I'm like 18, I don't know about Carol DeWitt, growth mindset, fix. I don't know any of that. I knew
Yeah.
this. If I don't give him a shot, who is?
Hmm.
And in life, if he doesn't have the courage to fail, then he's always going to be insecure. He's
Hmm.
always going to be shy. So if for an hour, whatever our game was on Saturday, if you can be out there and have people have expectations of him that he's scared,
Yeah.
great. I would celebrate. I'd say, "Are you nervous?" "I'm so nervous, coach." You know the plays?" "Yeah." "Okay." Nervous means you care about it.
Yeah.
I didn't know what again, not educated in any sports psych. I'm not still at graduate school learning all this stuff. I'm just going off a feel because I had a lot of sympathy. Like I could only imagine you going out there and running a play, not being fast enough to run it, not being like coordinated. You're not boxing out. You're not doing setting picks right, but you're
Yeah.
out there trying. And that's all it was. And the kids knew he's not going to get
Mhm.
set the right pick, coach, but I'll work through it. I'll set him up. I'll make him better.
Yeah.
Everybody helped, and I think that's what he got out of there. And later on, I see him on other teams, and he's not happy. He's on the bench because he really wasn't that good. But for me, it was an opportunity for this kid to get a little bit of light shined on
Mhm.
him, and for him to feel like what's possible if you're not scared to fail.
Yeah. And that's really what the key is.
At that age, even at that age, you're thinking, "Wow, those are some deep concepts for what, a third grader?" Yeah, for a
And it
third
also becomes
grader.
foundational at that age. Like, it's important at that age, maybe more important than later on.
You're learning.
Mhm.
He is learning. And I mean, fun fact, when I was getting my AA, I took a lot of child development classes and I ended up
Mhm.
getting a little certificate. And I was a preschool teacher for 3 years.
Really? I would not have guessed that.
Yeah. I had a full class. It didn't start off like that. Nobody wanted a male preschool teacher, 3 to 5 year olds, right? So I had like two or three. But eventually, like as the semesters went on, oh, I was packed
Mhm.
because I was a male role model. And it was something different that I brought to the classrooms that a lot of the parents liked. And I
Mhm.
did it all on physical education. So they also liked that their kids were crashed out in the car, couldn't even make
Yeah.
it home.
Yeah, that's a big
They
part.
love that. They love that a lot of my curriculum was PE, playing,
Mhm.
doing all the things that were, at that age, I thought you need to be active. You need to get your body moving. So again, I always loved being around teams and what came out of teams, and proud of the work that you did. Was it
Mhm.
cool winning? It was. it was only cool winning because it was a product of how good the kids had gotten from what you got, not
Yeah.
for like the actual scores and what have you. It was more about like, man, I just thought of this. Like, I didn't know if it was going to work, but look at this. This team is cruising. We're
Mhm.
destroying teams, and we're doing concepts that no other team at that age is doing because we're learning, and people are holding each other accountable, and people are coming in and learning their place. So again, I think when you invest in whether it's kids or clients, and you know how to really support them, their growth and within your program, you'd have a churn rate that would be in like single digits.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is really what we're all shooting for, honestly.
Hmm.
Um, okay, so let's talk about the team that you're building now, because I think it's super powerful what you're doing now. When did you get into more of the programming stuff and the extremely, in depth, hands on, the stuff that you're doing now, basically for equestrian rider? Or like, to talk
Yeah.
about how you made the transition from strength and conditioning coach to where you're at now.
So one of my friends and colleagues, he came back from a trip to Australia, and he came back with something called a high performance model.
Okay.
And he is the godfather of that. You won't find any professional team for any sport or college that has the resources to pay for a coach like this that doesn't run a model like this. This model consists, the main purpose of this, if I take a step back, is to optimize your readiness for game performance. And what that means is, if we can control to some extent or monitor all the variables that happen outside the court, the field, whatever you're playing, um, you can predict performance that you because you're setting your athletes up to be ready to go on game day. That's what the whole purpose is: optimization of readiness.
Okay.
So, in order to have a high performance model or system, you need not only a strength and conditioning coach, but if you think of big cogs, like the middle cog is your athlete and all these surrounding cogs around it to make this system go. You have a cog of sport performance, strength and conditioning. You have a cog of the medical part, athletic trainer, physical therapist, if you would. You have the cog of sports dietitian, nutrition, sports psychology. In college, it's counselor or making sure like the student tutors.
Yep.
Then you have some type of other faculty advisement. Then you have all these cogs that we predict bring stress to the athlete. And if we can help with that, manage it, we know where to properly dose the athlete, how much, according to what's overall already dosing him. If there's a lot of schoolwork, we know that he's not going to get sleep. We know that there's not going to be a lot of nutrition. We know that schoolwork is going to be a detrimental. Schoolwork is not going to be optimized because
Yep.
he's not doing well in school, and it's going to in college. Unfortunately, it's going to affect his performance. So we figured out a way to help him handle all those stressors so that he could have tools that he can use to optimize his performance. Now, if you think about that in pros, they have all of that, except they don't have the tutor per se, right? But
Yeah.
they have
Yeah.
all
No.
these other things that help make sure that on Saturdays or whenever the pro sport is played, that they are optimal because they're an asset.
Hmm.
And so my friend, he developed that. And now there's not a team that doesn't use his influence.
Hmm.
When I was working for him, that's where I learned it, what to do, how to manage it, how to organize all that information. So now I wouldn't call myself a sports scientist, but I was a more effective coach. Why?
Okay.
Because I knew that sports psychology was important. I knew that nutrition was important. I knew that if you're dealing with pain, pain makes you ornery. So it affects your psychology. It affects
Mhm.
how well you're going to be in the weight room. It affects how you're going to eat. So if I can help manage all of these things for my clients, now you're getting a service that would mimic even a medical model.
Yeah.
But a true what I think everyone in our world would be, or in our industry would be the true insurance or medical type
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah. No,
system that we need.
absolutely.
Like, we are very proactive and not reactive. We would
Mhm.
actually keep people healthy because we have what we need. And so that is where we're at now in the, I call it the Equistrength high performance system. And anybody that joins our program, it's not just going to get your basic 3 4 days a week workout. No, we analyze your riding performance, because that's what I did in football. I'd go out and watch practice and time routes, video routes, and understand the biomechanics of changing directions, biomechanics of being hand-to-hand combat with another individual. Like, what's your footwork like? Where's your body position? I had to learn a lot of equine anatomy and
Mhm.
physiology and biomechanics, but now I can, watch some high-end riders and be able to help them with their biomechanics. So once we know that, we understand now, what's your schedule like? What do you do for a living? Are you married? Do you have kids? What are their kids' names? What's your husband's name? What does he do? Is he supportive? How many horses do you have? How long have you had them? And we get all this information so that we can start to help them with all the variables that bring stress to them, that don't allow them to really be confident in their passion. So every coach that I bring in, that has been our key, our target, what we aspire to do: build confidence in these clients so that they can do their passion safely and be able to find like the joy from it, because it can be very difficult when your husband is not happy with you. And about 99.9% of my clients are women, so I'm going to
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
those terms. Husband's mad at you. You got your kid that's moving away to college. That's going to impact their adherence to a program. They're sad. So we get our sports psychologist, who also used to be a writer, to go there and help with that.
Mhm.
Nutritionists, they're a writer. A lot of my assistant coaches, actually all of them, are writers. I'm the only one that doesn't own a horse.
Yeah.
And so for me, it builds a lot of sympathy within the coaches. They understand. It builds a lot of rapport with the clients, so that they will let us into their world, so that we can help them. Because when we ask our clients, and on any sales call, why do you ride? Why do you want this? Horses are expensive. Your husband doesn't get it. Why do you do it? 75% of the women will start crying on the spot, because some of them will be telling me, nobody's ever asked me that. And then the waterworks come.
Mhm.
But that's passion. That's passion. I didn't start off with that in my sales script at all. I just was wondering, God, you're hurting. You have 4 vertebrae that are fused. You have an ankle that's shattered. Why do you ride? You could do some. And then, they never really think about it. Nobody's ever asked them, and they don't even know how to express it. I think if you ask Simon Sinek, he would tell you it's because what you're trying to have them explain is in a region of our brain that is emotional, and that doesn't communicate well with the portion of our brain that is in charge of communication. So
Yeah.
all they can do is cry. And so I get it. And so from there I go, I understand that passion, and we can help you. We can help you so that you can get on your horse. And we're not talking about strength. I'm not talking about X's and O's. I'm talking about, we can help you so that when you're on your horse, you can take a deep breath and breathe out and be like you were when you were riding when you were 13.
Mhm.
And then sometimes I have to be like, oh no, what did I just say? Because then it'll be, bah! And they start really crying. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
got to be careful with my words, because it is very powerful for them
It
that
is.
this is what we're actually doing. But I wouldn't be saying that either if we couldn't do that. If I couldn't
Mhm.
show them the model to help them do that, which is what's missing.
Yeah, and you also you tie in. First of all, I mean, I've gotten to have kind of a front row seat to watch you build this team, and every time I feel like we talk, you're like, "Guess who? Guess what I just brought on to the team?" Like now, I've got I don't only have the sports psychologist, I've got the nutritionist and the writer too, and then now I've got this coach, and like your business has grown and grown and grown, and your team has grown and grown and grown, and so it's been phenomenal to get to watch you do that. You also are different from how you were whenever you were a strength and conditioning coach for these, athletic teams. You also have dove extremely deep into almost pioneering really a new way of using some of the most advanced analytical tools available to strength and conditioning coaches for this sport, for this world. So talk about how that came about and what you're using that specific equipment for with your clinics and your riders.
Yeah, so in college, I got the opportunity to meet a couple of really brilliant coaches that started using this technology called force plates, accelerometers. And they were starting to measure how well their programs would work. How well can an athlete produce force? How well can an athlete absorb force? Two basic things. And that technology was not portable. That technology was big, big desktop,
Mhm.
huge things that you had to stand on. Now there's a company called Vault Performance out of Australia, and they have really impacted sports performance. The technology is smaller, it's faster, portable, and a lot of professional and collegiate level schools have their technology so that they can understand what their programs are doing. We're talking about rehab. If you rehab with these things, you can come in there and you can test how well your knee extension or flexion is and be able to get a number, something quantitative that they can measure and go, okay, let's see if we can get this knee to produce more force, either in flexion or extension. Every sport has these, we're going to call them variables, data points that will give us a picture on how well they play their sport or what's needed. There's always the X factor, right? There's always like that dog in you that we can
Yeah.
never measure.
Yeah.
But for the most part, vertical jump, timing gates, how fast are you? How explosive are you? How strong? Not just relative, but maximal. How much force can you produce into the ground? Instead of like deadlifting and you're saying, well, you're deadlifting 500 pounds. You get on this thing and the 500 is so slow that you might not be a good athlete. You're just good at grinding out 500 pounds.
Yeah.
So we're starting to measure like how are you doing your work? So for every sport that you can imagine, Vald has been involved and has metrics and a normative data pool that you can use so that you can know how to train that for that sport. All of one big population, equestrian athletes, nothing.
Mhm.
One of their workers used to work with me here in Lexington, and he reached out to me. They said they had a meeting and they wanted to get into this equestrian world, but how, who is even experienced with using force plates? And he dropped my name, and the next thing I know, I'm getting contacted by them. They're saying, here's these force plates, let us know what you think. And I go, what I think? Yes, I want to
Yeah.
do this. So I came up with the plan for 2024 that I was going to go around the country testing as many athletes as possible, and I gave myself a goal of 500. I'm at like 210 right now.
Mhm.
500 athletes. But by the way, next week I'll probably knock out another 40 or 50. But
Mhm.
200 and some athletes with the goal being 500 so that I can have enough data, enough normative data of people that I can go to the University of Kentucky here. I have a couple of people that are willing to help me create all of this data that we can publish and put out information, peer reviewed articles for the equestrian community. So now I will be put in a spot where I will be the authority for
Yeah.
training equestrian athletes. I won't be a rider fitness guy. I never
Yeah.
was. I don't have that in my bio on anything. We're not, if anything, I say fitness. My motto or my tagline is fitness does not equal performance.
Mhm.
Because they always say fitness and it's all wordplay, but we're not working on your fitness when you're a soccer player. It's kind of like already a sad thing that you should be fit as a soccer player. We don't work on your fitness, we work on your performance.
Mhm.
Basketball, fit? You of course you're fit. You run all day, you're fit. But are you a good, as far as performance, basketball player?
Mhm.
So same thing with equestrian athletes. I'm giving them what they need. They don't know they need it. That's the thing that's really difficult. How do you sell something to an audience that doesn't perceive that as a problem? You educate them.
Yep.
Because that what do they always say? As a salesperson, you always have to think of like, what problem are you solving? I am solving a problem. They just don't know about it. And once they know, once they see all this, I've never had someone go in the clinic and go, oh, wow, now I don't need this. If anything, they're like, how long has this been around? Are you the only one doing this? This is such valuable information. So it's very affirming to me when I'm going, yeah, I knew this was going to happen.
Mhm.
Being the authority is going to be the goal for me in the next year. Is wherever people, I mean, wherever there's a rider out there that is struggling with something, that I would be the go-to person. Maybe even not to work with, that's fine, but to come in and say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this. Can we set up a clinic? I'll get some riders, and that way we can keep adding to this pool so that they can have this service. Because eventually I'll share this information so that
Yeah,
everybody knows how to be safe, how to actually have this confidence that we want to build. So it's not even going to be about getting clients; it's about getting influence.
that's so amazing. And I think that's a beautiful way to kind of sum up really what seems to be your just mission on earth is to, build these fantastic teams, create these fantastic products, go deeper in these different topics and ideas really than anybody else maybe cares to go, and really round it out and make it something super valuable for everybody that's involved. So Tony, every time that I talk to you, I get more and more and more value from you. It's amazing to see the type of impact and the type of influence that you are building. And every time we talk to you, it seems like you're crushing new goals and encountering new problems and new challenges with knocking down some of those barriers. So dude, always rooting for you. I really appreciate your time. I told you I've got one more question for you.
Yeah,
um, Tony, what are you going to accomplish by any means necessary?
I'm going to build up my team so that they are not only confident in their role, but my goal is for them to be confident that I have their best interests in mind. Building a new team, nobody's ever going to care about your product like you do.
Nope.
But if they know that I care about them as people, then that's my goal by any means necessary. Whether, no matter how many errors they make, no matter if they lose clients from me, I don't care. What I care about is making sure that they understand that I've got their back and that I will help them be the best person they can be before they can be the best coach for me that they can be.
That's amazing. I have no doubts you'll do it, man. I appreciate your time. I know I took a little bit more than I
Now,
kind of promised you, but I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Keep doing what you're doing, man. You're crushing it, and I hope we can have you on again here soon with maybe some articles and some peer reviewed stuff to your name.
yeah, me too, man. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Of course, man. Talk to you later, Tony.
Sounds good. Bye.
Guys, that's it for my conversation with Tony. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And just getting to hear him, you can tell how passionate he is about everything that he does, and just the way with which he kind of looks at all the things that he's doing, whether it be a brand new, realm to him in equestrian ride, like riders, right? Or building teams or building businesses or any of the things that he's done. He's doing it in a very deep, thoughtful, analytical way. And so, yeah, I knew I had to have Tony on the second that we kind of started to talk. And he's done some amazing things on AR, and he's had goals within his business that we've just crushed time and time again. And he's somebody that I know for a fact is not going to stop until he does exactly what he said he's going to do. So, if any of part of this episode really resonated with you, the way the show is going to grow is if you share it with other people. So if you got any value out of today's episode, share it, even if it's a timestamp of like a specific part of the episode that you want someone to hear. If they don't get something from this particular episode, maybe they'll find another one that they really resonate with. And that's how the show is going to grow. So do me a favor. If you got something out of it, share the show. Make sure that you are subscribed on YouTube and following the show on any type of audio platform to make sure you don't miss any of the fantastic, just amazing upcoming guests that we have slated. We've got some really cool stuff and some cool announcements too that are going to be coming out as well over the next few weeks. So I appreciate you guys. I hope you have a great rest of your Monday or whenever you're listening to this. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.